Hey, what is going on, guys? DK. Back at you with another video here to bring the two-game NBA main slate on Tuesday. Before I get into the video, if you guys are new to the channel, welcome. My name is DK. I make daily videos and live stream for NBA and NFL slates on Draftkings. If you're unable to watch these videos, I also upload on Apple Podcasts. Link down below is called the DKDFS Show. If you were interested in signing up for premium content, I offer that on patreon.com, an esports package that includes NBA, or an esports package that includes CSGO and Call of Duty, and I also offer an NBA package. I do want to thank Prize Picks for sponsoring this episode. So, if you're not familiar with Prize Picks, they will post, again, fantasy scores or fantasy projections, and you can either take the over or the under. So, you're taking over under, again, on fantasy points. So, like Trae Young's projected for 48 fantasy points, you have the under, you have the over. So that is one way to play. They also have the now newer way of single stat DFS, where you can take like over under on points, assists, rebounds, 3-pointers made. They have basically every single sport you can think of. They have esports, they have football, PGA, and I think it's a fun change of pace from DraftKings because, again, you're not playing against anyone, you're just playing against the house. If you guys want to try it out, you can sign up, use the code DKDFS. DKDFS, all one word, link down below. You'll get a 100% match up to $100. So basically, you put $100 in, you get a free $100 to play with. So let's go over some of these that I like. Let's see. So scrolling through some of these. Okay. Looking pretty sharp. So I will say, Conley is currently questionable for the Jazz. If you are confident he doesn't play, then you can go over on a guy like Ingles, go over a guy like Clarkson, right? Because they're going to have to play more. So again, he is currently questionable. So keep an eye on that one. But if you get that news that Conley's out, try to go to Prize Picks right away and get to like Clarkson and Ingles and take the over. Zubac, we'll see what the Clippers do with the starting lineup. My thinking is they continue to try to go small, and he might barely play, even against a big Jazz front court. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what they end up doing. But all these, they seem pretty sharp. I think, if Embiid is fully good to go, then I think taking the over on 53 looks pretty decent to me. Obviously, he's still going to be a little bit hampered, but he was able to play that entire game last game and went for 60-plus fantasy points. So, all right, before we talk about this two-game slate, let's look back at the lineup here from Monday's slate. So Monday, it didn't go good because the game I stacked blew out. So that was no fun. And, again, I'm looking like a clown for picking the Bucks in this series. Not looking good at all. Lineup was Drew Holiday, Kyrie, Bruce Brown, Giannis, Blake, Mike James, Bobby Portis, and Chris Paul. Chris Paul was the lone bright spot. He was the one guy that was somewhat popular in the late game. No one else. The funny thing is, I was looking at my lineup. I was like, oh, well, I'm obviously dead. Game blew out. It's over. But I'm looking at every other lineup in the higher stake stuff. And everyone had the same thing. Everyone stacked the early game, had the same exact mindset as me, and no one played anyone in the late game. I just want to go. It's crazy the ownership in this late game in the higher stake stuff. So Chris Paul, again, he was the one popular play. He's the one guy I played. He went for 50, or he was 50% owned, went for 49 fantasy points. That was nice. Mikal Bridges went off today. No one played him. 9% owned. Let's see. Devin Booker was decently popular, 34%. He was kind of a bust, only 38 fantasy points. DeAndre Ayton, no one played him, 5%. Went for 35, I guess not terrible. Aaron Gordon, no one played him, 10% owned, 31 fantasy points. MPJ, again, 12% owned, 28 fantasy points. Jermichael Green was only 12% owned. He had a nice game. Torrey Craig, 1% owned. Jay Crowder, 21%. Crazy. The ownership in the scheme was so low. Rivers was 32%. He was kind of a bust. It was a low-scoring day. Low-scoring game because the clear, game that had way more upside blew out. And it just sucks, Random blowouts are the worst, right? Because that was a game. The Bucks actually, the closing line, the Bucks were actually favored by 1. It started with the Nets favored by 1.5 or 2, and the sharps in Vegas actually bet it or pushed it the other way. So the Bucks were actually favored. and just got destroyed. Just awful. That game was so brutal to watch. Again, I was so excited to. I was thinking we were going to get a nice close game and just an absolute blowout. So, yeah, can't really. Again, random blowouts are the worst, but that is what it is. It's just funny that, you know, every single person in the higher stakes stuff had the same idea as me of just stacking the early game. Like literally 6-7 players. Every single person you look in these lineups had 6 or 7 players in that first game. Again, just unfortunate about the random blowout. But all right, so before we get into the 2 games later, I'll ask real quick if you guys could leave a like button on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't upload videos you don't know live. I will be doing a YouTube live stream tomorrow. Make sure to check it out, answer any of your guys' questions, and let's try to aim for 150 likes on this video. All right, so we'll start off with Atlanta and Philly. Check the Vegas odds, I guess, really quick. So the Hawks 76ers is a 223 over under. The 76ers are 5-point favorites. That leads me to believe that Embiid's playing. They have him listed as questionable. I think he plays. And Clippers and Jazz, a 220 over under. The Jazz are 4-point favorites. We're still waiting on the Conley news as well. So a couple big pieces of news there. All right, and the Atlanta side. So Trae Young at 9-2. Even though it's, you know, not necessarily the best matchup. I mean, he just lit up that 76ers defense. Like, Danny Green couldn't handle him. They had to change up their defense in the second half. Trae's been phenomenal. He has been really, really good in the postseason so far. And the minutes are going up on him too, 41-39. So like earlier in the postseason, he was playing about 35 minutes, which wasn't really a change. But now he's playing close to the 40-minute mark. And it just this whole offense is Trae Young, right? Pick and roll Trae Young. I think he's a pretty solid spend up. I do have some interest in Trae Young. Capella, same thing I'll say last time is if Embiid does end up getting ruled out, then I have more interest in Capella, but I just don't want to target centers against Joel Embiid. So, yeah, I really have no interest in a guy like Clint Capella right now. Bogdan Bogdanovic has been Mr. Consistent, playing about 35-ish minutes and getting like 30 to 35 fantasy points. So, I think he's a safe play. We haven't really seen the upside from him, but again, he's been pretty consistent. John Collins actually had a pretty nice game last game for 33 fantasy points. We should get somewhere around 30-35 minutes from him. I think he's a fair filler play. Again, he's been a little bit disappointing from a DFS standpoint in the playoffs, but yeah, 5.6K is doable. Now, keep an eye on DeAndre Hunter news. That is pretty big. He was actually a late scratch that last game. If he is out, then that should be more minutes for guys like Gallinari and Huerter. Now, most of those minutes went to a guy like Kevin Huerter, who went from hovering around the 20-minute mark to playing 29 minutes. So if there's no DeAndre Hunter, I think Kevin Huerter will be a pretty popular value play, but definitely someone I would have some interest in. Gallinari did not play that well, only played 18 minutes, but I think if he would have shot better or played a little bit better, he could have extended to like the 20 to 25-minute range. So Gallo and Huerter would be the two guys that can get the boost if DeAndre Hunter can't go. Also Solomon Hill. So Solomon Hill started the last game. He played 25 minutes. I would assume we get similar run if he starts again. Now with Solomon Hill, he is not a good point per minute guy at all, but he's close to min price if you want to use him as a punt play. And then DeAndre Hunter, if he does play himself, I think he's a fair value as long as there's no limit. I would assume we get the normal 30 to 35 minutes. Again, with him, more at the first defense. He's definitely taken a step back offensively, at least in the playoffs. But he's been pretty solid in the defensive end and someone I think that will get a decent amount of minutes if he can play. And that's really like Lou Williams, again, will play the backup point guard, but I mean, unless you think he can get you, 15 fantasy points in 10 minutes, it's just probably not for me. All right, so let's move on to Philadelphia. Again, Embiid questionable. My assumption is he plays. And if he does play, I really like Embiid because no one can stop him on the Hawks. And he is just a phenomenal point per minute guy. He played 38 minutes last game. It's just a minutes thing, right? I think as long as he doesn't aggravate that injury, he's going to play all the minutes he can handle. So I really like Embiid here at the top. Now, if Embiid is a late scratch, then Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons become two of the best plays of the slate. But I assume Embiid plays. So with that being said, Tobias Harris at 8.3K is more of a secondary play. Still solid option. I think plays about 35 minutes. But it wouldn't be like a must play. And then Ben Simmons, I think is fine either way. I think if Embiid is out, that actually helps Tobias Harris a little bit more because then he turns into the number one on offense. Ben Simmons is still going to be the guy, handling the ball, being out there. Obviously, is a good defender and stuff in the stat sheet. So, and he's been playing a lot better in the playoffs. He has. He really disappeared for a while in the regular season, but he's starting to get back to the Ben Simmons we know from like a year or two ago. So, I think Ben Simmons is fine either way. A guy that should play big minutes and again can stuff the stat sheet. I like playing guys like that. Now, going down the list on Philadelphia with Seth Curry, Danny Green, they're pretty similar players in the fact that they're both pretty reliant on scoring. Back-to-back 30-plus fantasy point games from Seth Curry. I think that's, he's solid, but again, somewhat reliant on scoring. And Danny Green had the bad shooting game last game, only for 16 fantasy points. Same thing, right? He's kind of got to knock down those shots. So with Danny Green and Seth Curry, they're both in play. I think Seth Curry will be a little bit higher owned based on the last couple of games. But they're pretty similar players in the fact that they both have to knock down shots to get fantasy value. Dwight Howard is only playable if Embiid misses. If Embiid plays, I have no interest in Dwight Howard at 4.5. So Tyrese Maxey at 3.9, I still think he's playable here. If you watch that game, he had so many shots that could lip out. He bricked both free throws. I think if he would have made a couple more shots, he would have stayed out there a little bit longer. He only played 14 minutes, but when he was out there with that second unit, the offense ran through him. They were just getting the ball to Maxey and letting him do work. So I still think Maxey's viable here at 3.9. Obviously a little bit risky based on those minutes of last game, but I do think if he plays well, he could push for the 20-minute mark, which I think makes him in play for value. Now the rest of the 76ers, they've still been running a deep bench, but no one playing huge minutes. Hill, Thibault, maybe a little Mike Scott, Shake Milton. These guys all probably play a few minutes, but not enough for me to really feel confident with anyone. I will say, I guess, if I had to pick one of these guys, Thibault, because I think they need his defense, and I got Trae Young. But, again, he's just, he is not a good offensive player. Again, he's just more out there for his defense. So, and, again, Korkmaz might play a little bit, too. It's just hard to feel confident with any of these guys. They'll probably play somewhere around 5 to 10 minutes each. So, yeah, I really don't have a ton of interest in the Philadelphia bench. All right, so let's finish up with the Clippers and the Jazz. I'm not going to lie, not a big fan of either team, so not super excited for this game, I guess. But we'll start off with the Clippers. And, again, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I would assume that they run the same lineup of the small ball, right? We saw, Dallas was a massive front court with Kristaps and Boban, and they still ran small ball. So, yes, Rudy Gobert is a big center, but I think the Clippers just want to continue to play the small ball lineup. So I guess we'll start with Kawhi and Paul George. Kawhi is probably the safer of the two. He's got the higher floor. Back-to-back really good games there against Dallas. Now, against the Utah Jazz, not necessarily the best matchup, but just a minute. He's going to play massive minutes, and he's under 10K. So I still think Kawhi's pretty safe. Paul George, I like point per dollar too. 3 straight 50 fantasy point games from him. And the minutes should be really good for both Kawhi and Paul George. So I think they're pretty safe options if you can afford them. Now, scrolling down to the rest of the Clippers. So Reggie Jackson's been playing pretty well. I think we get about 30 minutes from him. He's a good offensive player. I think he's a fine option. 43 fantasy point games, kind of an outlier, but I think we get, again, around 30 minutes and probably somewhere around 25-ish fantasy points. So perfectly fine with Reggie Jackson. Marcus Morris, Nick Batum. If they do run the small ball lineup, and if they're barely going to play Zubac, then Morris and Batum should play all the minutes they can handle, and I like both for value. Morris probably plays, 35 plus. And he had a good game last game. Nick Batum is kind of a do-it-all guy, good defender, can stuff the stat sheet. I think we get really big minutes from both of them if they want to go small. So Morris and Nick Batum, I think, are both pretty good value plays if the Clippers run out that small ball lineup. Ibaka not expected to play. Rondo has been god-awful last couple games, and the minutes have really trended down on him. If he plays well off the bench, I could see him getting extended. And we actually saw early in the series, he closed a couple games. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Rondo plays well. He plays 20-ish minutes and crushes at no ownership. It's just, for my one lineup, I have a hard time plugging him in. And Zubac. So this depends on what the Clippers are going to do, right? Are they going to throw him out there against Gobert? If Zubac starts, I like him for value because he's a good point per minute guy. But I don't know if they're going to do that. I think they're going to continue to go that small ball lineup, which means Zubac probably doesn't play a ton. So keep an eye on the starters. And if they do start Zubac, I like him a good amount for value. And then Terrence Mann had a nice game off the bench. I think we probably get, again, he got extended a lot more because Marcus Morris foul trouble early. I think we probably get somewhere around 15 minutes from him, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. At 3.3K, fair value play. Again, he played well last game. Kennard might play a little bit, but not enough for me to consider him. All right, let's finish up with the Utah Jazz. So, this price is just too cheap, right? Donovan Mitchell at 8.2, right? It's just, he should be a 9K player. So, there's no more limits on him, too. We don't have to worry about that. So, I really like Donovan Mitchell here. And especially if Conley can't go, then Mitchell looks even better. So, he looks like one of the best plays this slate. I really, really like Donovan Mitchell. Now, Rudy Gobert at 7-9. If the Clippers are going to run this small ball lineup, I mean, he should be able to feast on the glass, right? He should be able to go for a lock for a double-double, probably get a bunch of blocks. So, yeah, I think Rudy Gobert is a pretty good play too, especially if the Clippers are going to go small. And the big news is Mike Conley. So, dealing with that hamstring injury, we will see. If Mike Conley plays, I think he's a fair contrarian play. Again, I think that the hamstring injury will worry some people and he'll go pretty low owned. It's a 2-game slate, so taking a risk on Conley I don't think is the worst idea if he does end up playing. Now, if Mike Conley misses, then we have 2 guys I like a good amount here for kind of the mid-range to value in Clarkson and Ingles. So Ingles would most likely start and probably play around 30 minutes, would run the point guard a decent amount. He's been not the best recently, but he would get a pretty big boost playing that point guard role. So would like Joe Ingles for value, and then Jordan Clarkson would play more off the bench too. He would become a really solid play. So both Clarkson and Ingles get a massive boost if there's no Conley. Would like them both a good amount. Keep an eye on that. Bojan, his role won't really change. Right? We know what Bojan is. He's a sharpshooter, pretty reliant in the scoring. He's always in play, but he does have somewhat low floor if he's not hitting his shots. Anything else here? Niang probably plays about 15 minutes off the bench. I mean, contrarian value play, sure. Favors will play the backup 5, but really only becomes viable if there's Gobert foul trouble. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at, guys, for this 2-game slate. And, yeah, I think that's going to do it for the video. So, if you have been enjoying the content so far, I would really appreciate if you could leave a like button on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't upload videos you don't know live. Again, I will be doing a YouTube live stream tomorrow. Make sure to check it out. Thanks again. Have a great night, guys, and I'll see you all tomorrow in the live stream.